that was the outcome of their NEC meeting held last week. And right now I have on our discussion today from Abuja, the president of the Association of Senior Civil Servants of Nigeria, Comrade Tommy Okun, to discuss issues surrounding the recent palliative measures that the federal government has declared and the effect of the subsidy removal on civil servants and Nigeria as a whole. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, my brother. How are you?
Thank God. Now the federal government has suspended the 8,000 palliative to the downtrodden, as they put it. And in this period, what is your expectation from the government now in terms of pushing the economy that we're going through, that the civil servants and general Nigerians are going through? What's your own point on this right now?
Well, I think it's a general issue which Nigerians are aware, including the Nigerian workers and the larger community, that the suffering is now unprecedented. Because when you look at the poverty situation in Nigeria today, it is multidimensional, coupled with the removal of the fuel subsidy. That is very worrisome because no Nigerian is paid, whether you are a worker or you are not, none is paid. And you know that Nigerian economy is surrounded by fuel. And once that subsidy was removed, the poverty situations became unprecedented. It is also worrisome that the federal government palliative becomes an issue, because if you now borrow money and you want to spread the money as a dash, instead of putting it in a productive venture, which will have added value to the economy, it becomes very worrisome. Most especially today, the transportation becomes a challenge for Nigerian workers. Not just the workers, Nigerians as a whole. Even within the state and interstate, it becomes a burden. So this comes when the issues surrounding palliative and the discussion is still ongoing, and we have not submitted the report yet. So government now think for the people, and that is what we call the fair need, instead of allowing Nigerian inputs to the palliative so that they can have a holistic way of solving the problem. So that is a worrisome situation as we find ourselves today.
Yeah, comrade, sometimes ago, labor union are clamoring for or advocating 200,000 naira minimum. Will this still be your stand?
Well, if you look at the 200 naira minimum wage, coupled with the new price regime of the fuel, it has already been eroded. It has already been eroded because what will you buy? Now you look at the educational sector, the school fees has been jacked up. Everything has been jacked up. So what will 200,000 naira buy? It's no longer tenable, to say the least. It's no longer tenable. Well, maybe God has a reason for the implementation not to have started. But now that it's obvious that we are not even sure of next week, because the price may jump up again. When you look at the interplay because of the market force and the foreign exchange rate now, so if the foreign exchange rate jack up to about 900 or 1,000, it therefore means that the price of fuel will also increase. And when it increases, the price of goods and services will also increase. Then if you go by 200,000 naira demand, as the TUC put it then to the government, it therefore means that such amount cannot even cushion the effects of the intermarket play in respect of the removal of fuel subsidy.
Now, are you putting into consideration the informal sector, the workers, those in the private sector, and the informal? What is going to be their fate in case private government, adhere to your call?
Well, poverty has no boundary. It affects both the informal and formal economy. But the strength is that when it is well with the formal economy, the informal economy will also be affected positively. And these are productive ventures. It therefore means that government must also think of involving them in whatever palliative that will come. Like we said earlier, if you provide means of transportation that that will be able to bring down once the price of transportation, the pay is down, the price of goods and services will automatically come down, because that is another area, the sector that drives the prices of goods and services. So the informal economy will also be affected positively once government take into consideration, the formal economy with good and living wage that can, enable the worker to have the economic strength, where the purchasing power will also be of a great deal. That will even enable the worker to have savings. And when the worker have savings, the banks by themselves will have money. And when the banks have money, there's going to be a spillover effect, because they can also borrow to manufacturing industries that can also turn around the informal economy and the economy at a larger scale.
Comrade, I want to ask you, was there any input before now as to how you could guide the present administration so that you can arrive at a point where the government is okay and the workers also are okay?
Well, let me put it to that when the Presidential Committee on this palliative was set up, the TUC as an umbrella union submitted our own demand, our own charter of demand to the government. And the government also set up that committee, and then also set up 5 subcommittees. So it was expected that this committee will work and submit report in 2 months. So while we were waiting for this to take place and then arrive at a logical conclusion, was the bill to the request to the National Assembly for approval of 500 billion by the government. And one wonder where that was coming up. And again, not only that the 12 million poorest Nigerian household will be given 8,000 naira. And one wonder, what is 8,000 naira to a household? A household is made up of, let us even say, the minimum of 4. It therefore means that one person, you can calculate what one person can get for 6 months. Poverty with the inflationary rate. But I'm also happy that Mr. President has jettisoned that idea. So these are the issues. We will have expected Mr. President to wait until the committee submit the report, and then they set a template for implementation. Because within that report, the input of the organized labor vis-a-vis other experts will have been involved before the implementation. You cannot just set up a committee while the committee is ongoing and you decide to implement palliative. No. Otherwise, you will have put this palliative on ground before the announcement of the removal of fuel subsidy. I think that will have made a lot of economic sense.
Okay. Now, what do you think is the way forward? And how do you think that the government can achieve this way forward that your union may likely propose, so that it will be better for both the government and the people of Nigeria?
Well, the way forward is not just to focus on national minimum wage or salary increase. The way forward is let us also look at some of those palliative and then look at allowances. There is nothing wrong for government to come up with what they call PMS allowance, where every worker will be able to have allowance that affect the issue of transportation. Because if you look at especially the core civil service, those who are involved in consolidated public salary structure, it's a lump sum. And when you look at it, those components, cut across transportation and all other ones. But you find out that what Nigeria need now, very critical, is to look at those kind of palliative that can caution the effect of this removal. And one of them is transportation. If we have a good number of buses, at least 60 buses, that could be distributed to the state, because as at now, I think each month Nigeria made not less than 800 billion from the removal of fuel subsidy. So if you are thinking for the people, or you believe in the well-being of the people, this money should be applied back to various sectors of the economy that can caution that. Then come to the issue of discussion of national minimum wage, which is a tripartite consideration, and which must start in earnest. It therefore means that the aspect of arriving at a collective bargaining agreement, which is very germane, is important. But another important component is the implementation. Because if you look at what happened in the past national minimum wage, a lot of states were recalcitrant in the implementation, even though they were involved in the negotiation. So it has to be a sounding that let us arrive at collective bargaining agreement, the national minimum wage, but let state also be aware that they have to implement it to the ladder. These are issues that will go. So let us also look at the low-hanging fruits at this moment before we get to the larger, because the issue of national minimum wage is a constitutional matter. So you cannot just wake up and say we want to increase the worker salary without the government work.
Thank you very much for Comrade Tony Okon. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, my brother.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep. On the floor today, what are we expecting? Now is a new day.
We expect that the market will rally this week also, like we saw last week. The market, of course, towards the tail end of the transaction last week, the market was down. And so, looking at the reports of last week compared to the previous week, which shows that last week investors traded 4.18 billion shares, valued at 99 billion naira, exchanged in 41,446 deals, as against the previous week's transactions figure of 5.25 billion shares, worth 63.42 billion naira, exchanged in 57,234 deals. The financial sector continued to dominate activities with a total transaction of 3 billion shares, valued at 36.7 billion naira, done in 20,079 deals. The contributing 72.08% and 31.12% to total market transaction in volume and value terms, respectively. We won't go into other details because of time, but hopefully the market is expected to rebound and come back, and for investors to make some gain this week.
Thank you very much, Kendi Adiaga. That's how far we can go on business segment of Bumper Breakfast on Monday, the 24th of July, 2023. I will hand you over to Stanley Paul Ikao, who's going to give you sport update. Stay with us.